And one bump up. Welcome back to a Zanpakuto theory video. I was actually going to do a different, because I'm kind of going by squad right now. I was actually going to do a different character for, Zanpakuto theory, but I actually decided to continue with the visors right now. We did Love last week. Now we're doing Lisa Yadomaru and her Zanpakuto, Haguro Tonbo. So we're asking ourselves, what is first? Because this is one of the Zanpakuto where we actually don't see the Shikai's ability, nor do we see its Bankai. We know Bankai. So the question becomes not only what is her Bankai, but what does her Shikai do? We only see it really in battle once. And, I mean, it's clear it's a pretty cool weapon, but we don't actually see what it does. So, we have to figure out a lot of things here. A, does she have a Bankai? The correct answer to that is yes. She's a captain by the end of the series after a 10-year time skip, and she was, out of the Soul Society for 100 years prior to that as well. So she has to have a Bankai at this point. Except for Zaraki, you need to have your Bankai to be a captain. And 10 years is enough for the people, Isane, Tensei, or Tetsuzayamon, sorry, and Lisa, to gain Bankai. That's enough time for them to gain Bankai. So yeah, we need to figure out what its Shikai does, and by that, what its Bankai does. So first off, to figure out what the Shikai does, we are going to have to figure out a few things. A, the meaning of the name. The name usually gives at least a little bit of a hint. Also, the release command can kind of give you an idea as well. Also, the design can help, and figuring out a little bit of Lisa's personality can kind of give us an indication. Because remember, the Zanpakuto is a reflection of you. It is you. So whatever ability it has is more or less a reflection of your abilities as well. So Haguro Tonbo translates, roughly speaking, into either Iron Dragonfly for the Viz translation, or Iron Drink Dragonfly for the overall translation. It takes the form essentially as a kind of a polearm outfitted with a blade reminiscent of that of a monk's spade on the end, and a heavy ball on the other end, which allows the blade end to be used much like an axe, and the weight end to be used as a smashing implement. It does have one technique, she has one technique using it, not an ability, but technique, where she unleashes multiple piercing attacks at the opponent. This is a little similar to the technique, Senmoriyaroshi, or 1,000-page wholesale, technique that basically, with multiple blade movements that take place so fast they can literally shred a target into pieces. Something similar to that, kind of. So, it's kind of difficult to figure out. I was really kind of thinking over what kind of ability would this have. Is it more of a physical ability, say like Hosekimaru or Zabimaru or Getsubori, or is it more of a Keto-based ability, like most of the other? Even Elemental Zanpakutos technically are Keto-based. It's Keto in a certain element, kind of. And it's weird. Because based on her personality, I would expect her to have a Keto type. Because think about it this way. When you look at the people who have physical-based Zanpakutos, look at Kenpachi, Ikaku, Renji, Marechio, to name a couple right off the top of my head, to name like most who have kind of more physical-based types, they all have certain abilities, sure, but they're very basic abilities. They're all physical type. Kenpachi's is a power cutter. It cuts through anything. That's what it does, pretty much. It's a power tool. Renji's is a blade whip. A very cool blade whip, but it's a blade whip. It doesn't have any keel, but it's still very cool and interesting. Hosekimaru, it's a spear, but it turns into the section staff. Again, basic, but still an ability. Marechio's it's a freaking mace. It's a flail. So, it doesn't have really any ability except it can be long range and close range as well. But when you look at their personalities, very either aggressive or blunt or to the point. There's not much in terms of strategy in the sense of complex thinking or anything like that. They're either not the brightest or they just don't care about fancy. They just want to fight. Whereas when you look at Keto-based abilities, you see it more, and you could make a similar argument for Sajins as well. Sajins is a very physical-based Zanpakuto, but it has at least a kind of a twist on it where it's summoning something and it's a big physical attack, but still it's a physical-based Zanpakuto. Whereas you look at someone like, and I'll throw out, I don't know, 3 examples, Byakuya, Hinamori, and Kisuke. Kisuke, super intelligent. It would make no sense that he'd have a physical type Zanpakuto. Hence, Benihime is a very Keto-based Zanpakuto. Byakuya, he's a very intelligent guy, expert at Keto, very well-rounded. His Zanpakuto isn't necessarily a Keto type, but it's not necessarily a physical type. It's kind of somewhere in that middle. Similar in sense to Rankiko's as well. Hinamori, obviously it's a Keto type blade. Shunsui, very complex individual. Lisa's personality is a very calm personality, very I wouldn't say zen, but a very aloof, very even-headed personality. So that could a very intellectual person as well. From what she was his Shunsui's lieutenant for the longest time. So yeah, you could make the argument that it's Keto-based type, but the problem is its release command seems to say it's a very physical type Zanpakuto. Smash is not something you normally would see with a Keto-based release. Again, we're going to those examples real quick. Snap, for example, turns into a branch because it's a flying plum tree. So snap, and then you snap off branches, snap off the plum fruit, the fireballs. Makes sense for a Keto type. Whereas with Renji, it's roar. Same with Tekken, oddly enough. Extend turns into the spear. Drink, just one-word phrases that really aren't, that are a bit more on the aggressive or indulgent side. Whereas with a lot of Keto-based Zanpakutos, you'll actually have not just a word, but sometimes like a phrase, or even like Shunsui's I think is the longest. The poem he says. Same with Ukitake's. I mean, Byakuya's is scatter, which is right off the bat is not a physical type release per se. It's not very brunt force. Whereas Getsubori's just crush them. Yadomaru was bite, but we know that's electrical based. But again, you could have made an argument. Run with Ichiguma. So it doesn't always translate per se, but you can kind of get the impression. Smash doesn't come off as a Keto base per se, but her personality implies more of a Keto nature. So what do I kind of think the Zanpakuto ability is in her Shikai? I think, and this is just me, I've seen some people try to translate it literally, like, Iron Drink Butterfly, she turns into like a butterfly armor. It's like, I don't think it's that literal, someone said. I'm like, yeah, that's a little too literal. But I think we can get something out of the name. Iron Drink Dragonfly. What that kind of implies to me, and I'm going by the name and what we kind of got going on here, is that it maybe involves taking in minerals, particularly iron, and strengthening the blade, and either strengthening the blade, smashing, destroying metal if it can, whatever metal it like comes in contact with, or even though we saw her come into contact with Holybell, but we don't know if that sword was still made of metal at that point. Maybe taking minerals or reishi and embedding it into the blade, making it heavier, making it stronger, making it kind of like as it says, kind of a pole arm diving bell almost, where she's basically using momentum and bringing the weight of the blade and the ball down even further. Or it's something where she can actually manipulate iron in the area to some degree, like she smashes and like pulls iron out of whatever's around her. Maybe she can pull out of her opponent, and hence the term Iron Drink, kind of like Magneto did in X-Men 2. Hence the term Iron Drink, where it's literally drinking iron from the area. Now that's a very out there theory, but I don't think it's complete. Again, I don't think we saw the fight go on long enough for her to really show off what the blade could do. And it would be a unique ability. It would translate well to her, too, when you think about it. she's a very calm individual, implying more of a Keto-based nature, but the smash ability is very aggressive-like. She seems to be able to keep her composure, but is not afraid to get down and dirty. She's not afraid to basically get physical when she needs to. In fact, she's actually more than willing to. So that implies someone who's willing to go head on into a situation. So that might not be a bad idea, where she basically is able to extract iron, and either she can add it onto the blade, maybe like extending the blade or adding onto herself, or she throws the iron, like the iron in the form of like giant iron blades at people, or like embedding iron onto them, just kind of sealing them up. Which then brings into question, what the hell would the Bankai be? Now, depending on the blade, depending on the sword, the Bankai could change your blade up completely, or it could do jack shit. With like Komamura, with Shunsui, with Byakuya, well, Byakuya does change, but his entire blade changes anyway. With Betahime, the blade doesn't change. There's a bigger effect because they're Keto-based types. But with someone like Yamamoto, who has an elemental-based blade, the blade itself doesn't really change per se, except it gets burnt and charred looking. Horimaru doesn't change. The blade itself doesn't actually change. Ichigo's blade obviously does change, but that's part of what the blade does in that case. Mayori's does change as well, but it's a transformation type. Komamura's doesn't change. Kensei's does change. So it really depends on what kind of ability your blade uses. This type of sword, I get the impression it would change. The question is, into what? And see, that's the $20 question. That's the $1 million. That's a $20 million question. That's the $25.50 question. What would the Bankai first off look like for this? Going off the idea of the dragonfly, maybe it goes into more like it shrinks down a bit, but instead it's like the splayed wings of a dragonfly. So she adds on 3 more pole arms that kind of connect on her, and she's maybe got them kind of in wrists, on her wrist like this. So when she extends her arms out, she does take on the image of a dragonfly. Now, what the Bankai does even further is maybe it actually creates iron and then manipulates the iron. And then she could maybe just use that and just throw iron at people. I'm really spitballing here because I struggle to figure out what the idea of a Shikai would be. So I'm really spitballing here. However, it would be cool. That is something. Think about that. We never saw a Zanpakuto that manipulated metal. We've seen Zanpakuto that manipulated water, ice, fire, lightning. I think we even saw one that manipulated earth in the filler. But we never saw one that manipulated gravity. I think that would have been cool. Space we saw in the to a degree we saw manipulation of space. It wasn't true manipulation of space, but it was the manipulation of the precipice world. We saw that in the Reigai arc, but we never saw like gravity or actual space manipulation. We never saw metal manipulation. We never saw like crystal manipulation or anything like that. So in terms of elements, fundamental forces, there's still a lot you could explore. Maybe that's what hers does. Maybe it manipulates metal, and once you get into like the splayed dragonfly, and it's not like there's like 4 of these on her arm that just look the same. They probably the monk's blade, the blade part maybe extends down to give off more of the dragonfly appeal. So as you can see, it's how far it goes down. Maybe it extends down to halfway on the blade, and she's got again, they're on her arm. Now, she's the kind of person, it's clear, she knows how to wield her Zanpakuto, but this is a cumbersome weapon. This is not, you would need to be skilled in this type of weapon. Otherwise, and has a very small frame. So it's clear that while she's skilled in it, it's also still a very cumbersome weapon to be using. Like, Aizen just cut the blade in half when she tried to go at him. So it does run risks in battle. But I do like the idea of it being something to do with like metal manipulation. Excuse me, the iron drinking dragonfly, or the iron drink dragonfly, that the iron drink stands out to me. I feel like something to do with like the manipulation of iron, taking iron out of the environment, And then when in Bankai, splaying it out, manipulating even more iron, maybe even creating it at that point using your own Ryatsu. Hence why there's a limit. It's a Bankai, but you still, and then manipulating it to your heart's content. So, yeah, I think that's the best I can kind of pull from the little we have of Lisa's Zanpakuto. Let me know what you think. If you're a Bleach fan, let me know what you think about this. If you've got your own theory, I'd love to hear it. Because, again, when you have this little information, it really is difficult. Like, even with Love, we at least saw a little bit of what a Zanpakuto could do. So I was able to pull a bit from that. With this, we don't actually know what a Zanpakuto could do. So when... And with, like, Isane's, at least the name kind of came off as a pretty obvious one. I believe it translates to Frost Cloud or Frozen Cloud. So that was an easy one to go off of. Yeah, Lisa's a weird one. But still, that's my ultimate thoughts on that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed. I'll be back a little later with a top 20 Captain Class Shitegami video. Getting low on batteries. I got to charge my computer up for a little bit. Till then, thanks for watching. See you next time.